The Dingers podcast is on the air. I'm your host, Mitch. I'm here with my boy, Jake, and our buddy, Ron from Cubs on Tap. So we welcome you, Ron, back. I think it's your second time coming on, maybe third. No? We should have you on more because you're awesome.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you guys. So I'm happy to be on.
You might have heard his beautiful voice on Cubs on Tap, our buddies over there, part of the On Tap Sports Network. So if you're not giving them a follow, you need to. So go right now and follow them. And you can catch us every Monday night on the YouTube. So go to the Cubs or the On Tap Sports Network YouTube channel where you can subscribe and be up to date with everything going on in Chicago sports. Fellas, we have made it 156 games, and the season now comes down to these final 6 games. How are we feeling? You guys were at quite a few games this last week, you two. What was the vibe at Wrigley like this week? Like, I want to start there, like, because you guys got to experience it. What's the temperature like with the fans in Wrigley?
Jake, I don't know about you. Obviously, so for those that aren't sure, we just talked about it. Jake was at Tuesday and Wednesday's games. I was at Thursday and Friday's games. Friday's energy was awesome. Like, it felt like the last Friday 120 game of the season. You felt it was there. The vibe was good. KB gets his standing O when he goes to the plate. Vibes were good at Wrigley Field on Friday. I won't lie to you, though. Thursday felt a little weird at the ballpark, at least for me. It felt like the energy was a little died down. I think being tied with the Pirates at that point in the series with a chance to, some bad things to happen, which is what ended up happening with them losing on Thursday. The vibe wasn't the same. And I know a lot of it's late season, families, kids are back in school. So, night baseball games during the week are harder to get to, but it had a really weird vibe to it on Thursday, but Friday was absolutely lights out. And I think that's why it translated into a sweep over the weekend versus a 2 out of 3 loss Tuesday through Thursday. But Jake, I mean, what was it like Tuesday and Wednesday? I feel like Tuesday was a great day to be there. No?
Yeah. Despite the rain delay, Tuesday was phenomenal. Kim and I got there we got there like at 6:35. Traffic getting in was brutal, as most people listening probably know. And we weren't sure, like on the outside of the stadium, we weren't sure, I'd been checking Twitter to see if the game was in rain delay. I hadn't seen anything. We get in, tarps on the field. I get to chat with my Thai guy and Bleacher Jeff, and met a guy, Clark. I don't know. Clark seems to hang out with Bleacher Jeff, like in that section. Obviously all great dudes. And so getting to kind of just hang out in the bleachers, even though it was raining, we had our ponchos on, we had some beers going, we had hot dogs. It was great. It just was, it felt like we were hanging out at a bar. Like it just happened to be raining outside at a bar. That's what the bleachers, typically feels like. But getting to walk around out there, not having to worry about missing any game action was pretty fun. And then of course, when the tarp starts coming off, the crowd's going crazy. So I think that momentum just kind of led into the game, and the fans were ready. And it kind of felt like playoff baseball once it started. Like I think the attendance was 34,000 I think it was 34,000, which I don't know. It looked pretty packed despite the delay. I can't remember when they shared that number, but obviously by the time they share that number, some people probably, filed out for one reason or another. So it's great Tuesday, obviously huge win, offensive outpouring. And then as we've seen so many times with the Cubs, somebody mentioned, tomorrow is going to be the day where they don't score. So Wednesday was not very fun. Very different vibe. It was a beautiful night Wednesday night. It was great to be at the park, but I was with surrounded by buddies, had a great time, but yeah, just kind of boring night that night. So same kind of experience you had, Ron, in your 2 games. Like one night was great, the next night wasn't. And man, if that's not kind of an analogy for how this team has kind of felt down the stretch, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, and yesterday's game, man, ninth inning stressful. The whole day I feel like was just stressful because you're scoreboard watching and you know Arizona's won, you know Cincinnati's won, you know the Marlins have won. You're like, oh man, like Merriweather then walks the first two guys in the ninth. I'm at my daughter's volleyball game and I'm watching the game on my phone with a AirPod in my ear. And when Wisdom hit that dinger, like everything was quiet in the gym. I stood up. It was like, let's go. And everybody's looking at me. It's like, I had a cup shirt on. I was like, this is where my heart's at right now. My eyes are on my daughter watching her play, but right now, like I'm in this game. And so, yeah, it was fun. But at the same time, this next week of 6 games are going to be that kind of anxiousness, nervousness, a lot riding. I mean, it was good news today that we didn't play a game and actually made ground on Arizona. Thank you, Yankees, with that. So feeling a little bit better going into this week with today. Like, even though we didn't play, I have to feel a little bit better. But we have some fan questions and that'll kind of drive our conversation and lead us tonight. I felt like we've had some great people be on our podcast. We've had some great listeners that continue to listen to our podcast. We want them to kind of feel like they're part of our show, which you guys are. Every time you're listening, I want you to feel like you're part of our show. That's why we always say, follow us on Twitter, join the conversation, because it is. We want to build a community and we want you guys to join in and feel like you're right there with us, riding the emotions of what we have to go through, especially this next week. So we're going to start out with some fan questions. This is Justin Miller from Des Moines, Iowa. He has this question.
Hey guys, with the remaining schedule the Cubs have with the Braves and the Brewers, where's your confidence level in the Cubs securing that final wild card spot?
So thanks, Justin. And let's start with you, Jake. Where are we at with our confidence level heading into this week with the Braves and the Brewers coming up?
I'll be honest, you guys, I kind of spaced over the weekend after the high of the sweep, and getting to go to one good game last week. I kind of forgot that we have the Braves before the Brewers. I've been looking ahead toward this weekend series, thinking about going to the game on Friday. I don't feel great, and it's more than just the Cubs' performance. It's out of their hands because you look at the teams behind us, Arizona and Miami. So we're tied with Arizona. We're one game ahead of the Marlins right now. Arizona in their final 6 games gets the White Sox, so that's cushy, and the Astros. So the Astros that's tough.
Yeah.
But the White Sox, like they'll roll over. I mean, if the White Sox, if they could do one good thing this season, it'd be helping out their counterparts on the north side, which that won't happen.
No confidence in that.
Because they rolled over when they played the Brewers earlier this season too, I think.
Yeah, they did. Oh my goodness.
Destroyed. Yeah.
If the question was how much confidence do we have in the White Sox beating, it's 0.
None. And then the Marlins get the much atrophied Mets for 3, and then the Pirates for 3. So they could not get
some hot ball.
I'm not super concerned. I mean, after seeing the Pirates live last week, yes, I was at a game where they steamrolled us. But I think that was more kind of
they came back from 9 down against the Reds and won a game this last week.
But
so they got some fire.
The Reds are also falling off at this point in the season too. So I don't know, man. It's tough. Out of those, including the Cubs, out of those 3 teams, we have the hardest schedule by a landslide. So it's a flip of a coin between Arizona and Miami. I don't know, Luz, how are you feeling? Any better than I am?
I might be feeling a little better, and it's probably for a reason that I don't like feeling better for, but the Braves, in terms of their starters, are beat up, right? Fried is banged up, Morton's banged up. So yeah, you get Elder in game 1 on Tuesday, but I distinctly remember the Cubs beating Elder earlier this season, albeit it was rainy and gross, and I understand that part, but they still beat him, right? They were able to get to him. They got enough done to get the job done. But I think because of everything you outlined, Jake, in terms of the Cubs do have the worst gauntlet for the last 6 games out of everybody that's in it. Even though I know the Reds are technically in it, but it's really a three horse race at this point. It's Miami, it's Arizona, it's the Cubbies. So if you had to ask me on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably a very, very, very solid 4.795 or somewhere in that general range. Like, I'm not quite 50-50. I'm just below. And it really, to me, it comes down really to the Atlanta series. Like, I'm not so much worried about the Milwaukee series. And I know we have a question tonight that I don't want to share what I'm about to say because that's for later.
Yeah.
But I think it's the real key is the Braves series. Like if the Cubs win 2 of 3 between tomorrow and Thursday, I'm changing my answer from a 4.975 to like a 7.5, 8. But if they lose 2 of 3, or worst case scenario get swept, that 4.975 feels real cushy, right in that kind of mid range right now of like, let's see what happens. Which version of the Cubs do we get? The Pirates series where they don't show up, or the Rockies series where they show up and they're ready to play?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the last time when they played the Braves, they got really up and they played some great ball, which I would love to see. I'm optimistic because I feel like I've been pretty optimistic this whole season of like trying to see the good in things.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel really good that we don't have to see Strider and we don't have to see Max Fried, that we don't have to see them. It makes me feel a little better that they have decided to skip Hendricks start because the Braves absolutely crush on Kyle Hendricks, which I think is a smart decision. And I like that they've set it up to, if it comes down to the final day, that we have Justin Steele pitching the final day of the regular season. That if we need to trust anybody, that's going to be the horse that we're going to ride into the playoffs. And so I feel good that we've set ourselves up in such a way that if our offense shows up, that we should be good. Tyone's kind of leveled himself out the last couple starts. Feel good with where he's at, even pitching game 2. Atlanta has TBD. I heard he sucks, so I'm expected game 2 to pick up a W. So that's where I'm at. I don't know. It's tough. But let's get.
I think really quick too, worth noting. I mean, again, probably everybody else realizes this, but I've been sleeping. Last 6 games, road games, playoff environments in both cases. Like the Braves fans are going to be amped. They're going to want to see the studs play. It'll be interesting to see how many offensive players get rest days, if any, because they still, seeding still, I don't know what the record difference is, but home field advantage still matters for the Braves. I know that they've got the best record, right? I don't know by how much, but I'm assuming by a lot. They probably could rest their guys, but we'll see. And then Milwaukee's going to be hostile. It's not going to be an easy setting for the Cubs to go into, especially if things shake out that it could be Cubs Brewers in the wild card series, which I know we'll be getting into later on. So if there's an imminent matchup between the Cubs and the Brewers in the wild card series, it's going to be even crazier in Milwaukee this weekend.
So Atlanta's 156 record, and the Dodgers are 96-59. They still need a couple wins these last few games to seal up home field advantage, but they pretty much have it locked up, unless Cubs sweep the Braves. and then the Dodgers get hot the last few days. So it could happen, but yeah, they do have to play for that.
Also worth noting too, really quick, just for the Braves after the Cubs, they have the Nats for the last 3 at home.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
could help them in terms of their confidence level and comfortability of if the Cubs series doesn't go their way, they're not freaking out about home seating because, they've got, I don't want to use the term Cush series at the end, but they got an easier series to round out the season.
Maybe we get lucky and catch them sleeping, looking at that cushy series, to wrap up the season.
Maybe.
Yep. All right, let's get to our question number 2. This comes from Mike Dubs from Minneapolis.
What's up, boys? All right, here's my question. I want to know who you think the one player is that needs to step up in these last 6 games. And as always, let's go Cubs!
All right, thanks, Mike Dubs. I love Dubs.
Love you, Dubs.
Dubs always delivers. Always delivers.
Yeah. What a great question, man.
You showed off that radio voice too in that question too, huh?
Definitely. Ron, let's start with you. Who you got? Who's the guy you're leaning on?
I think it's a guy that I've been kind of hammering for on Cubs on Tap lately as like that fly the W pick that we do over there for a series. Just a guy that he's a streaky player, but if there's any player on this team that to me has that burning desire to win, it's got to be Dansby Swanson this week, especially against his old team. That's the first time he gets to go back to Atlanta. You don't think he wants to go in there and hit 3 or 4 homers in this series? Like, talk about an exclamation point. Hey, you guys let me go. Yeah, I might not be on your 100-win squad right now, but I'm going to single-handedly carry the Cubbies into the playoffs because we're going to sweep you guys in Truist, and then we're going to go to Milwaukee and we're going to go take care of business. To me, like, I think Dansby Swanson, you remember the TikTok trend where it was like somebody says something and the guy's got the headphones on and you hear the music building up like he's about to go kill somebody?
Yeah.
That's Dansby Swanson right now waiting in the hotel to go play the Braves tomorrow. Like, he's 100% dialed in. To me, if they're going to ride anybody this week, it's got to be Dansby Swanson.
I like it. Jake, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought about Dansby for that same reason, Ron. I looked more, so the way that I framed this was looking at offensive performances over the last 2 weeks. I had 14 days. It's Cody Bellinger, man. It's Cody Bellinger for me because in the last 2 weeks, Bellinger's batting 175 with a 625 OPS, and it's not. Look, again, 2 weeks is not a long time, but we need the team to be hot going into a potential playoff run. So for 2 reasons, I need Belly to get hot for that reason, and then for us to even make the playoffs down the stretch here. I also think he's been the X factor for the team all season. When he started getting hot, it was like, okay, this team has it. When you saw him click, there was this confidence level, like, okay, we've got veterans on this team who've been there and done it in Bellinger and Swanson, both World Series champions, both offensive studs when they're on defense. Like they're the complete package, right? So, man, in that sense, I hope that both of our players click this final week because that means that this team is ready to go. Like you hear players talk about it, that the playoffs is a lot about getting hot at the right time. And I really hope that Belly specifically, but I agree with you on Dansby too, Ron, that these two guys can get hot down the stretch to walk the Cubs in. Mitch, what do you think?
I mean, I love both your picks. I think both of those, especially like I want to now lean, I had my guy, but now I want to lean offense of like, oh, I should pick Sayab because if we had all 3 of our picks land, that's definitely going to carry our offense.
100%.
But I still have to go back to I originally was thinking, and it's Justin Steele.
Yeah.
This time of year, playoff baseball, you need starting pitching. You need starting pitching to carry you and put that exclamation mark on like a dominant outing and where 1 run will win it for you because Steele ain't giving up any. We need the Steele that was pitching 2 weeks ago. Not the last 2 weeks. You could see he's just running out of gas. If he could just fill up his tank one more time, if Jan Gobes could give him some gas money and let him fill up the tank one more time and get us into the playoffs, that's huge, especially that we are going to have him pitch twice in these last 6 games to get us in there. That would be awesome. It'd be really great if we could seal it up by game 5, and then we wouldn't have to pitch him the last game of the year and save him for the playoffs and get him an extra day's rest. But I don't think I think it's going to come down to the final day. And so Justin Steele is going to have to be the guy that's going to give us 8 strong and not give up any runs. And hopefully your 2 guys that you picked gets hot with Seiya, and that'll do it. If those 3 guys all got hot right now, we'd be playing like we were in late August, early September. That was when we were hot. All those guys were on. That's when Seiya was just starting to get hot. That's who I'm going with is Justin Steele.
Heck yeah. I think too with Steele, you nailed it on the head, Mitch. I mean, you need that elite starter to come through, right? Yeah. Like he's had a couple of rough outings recently too, not to I wouldn't even, they're rough, but like, it's because the bar is very high now for Justin Steele. Like he's the ace. You have that bar, I think, mentally set for him. But like you said, I mean, especially if this first start in Atlanta, he's able to come out and go 7+, that immediately sets the tone for these 6 games for this Cubs team to take that momentum and ride with into both of these series.
Yeah. And like even the last 2 outings, it's not like they were horrible. Like the one was just 2 bad pitches that he left up and home runs.
Yep.
If you would have made one more pitch and got out of that inning, like we wouldn't be talking. It's still like 3-1 game at one point when he gave up the second home run. Like we're still in that ball game. It's a totally different, but then giving that one up late in the 7th, and you're like, okay, now this game's pretty much out of hand. So but Steele's still been solid. I still trust him every day to hand him the ball to go out there and put us in a position to win. So
100%.
All right. Speaking of pitching, we got another question from Jared Torkelson from Elgin, Iowa. Curious how you see the bullpen, especially the back end, shape up this last week and during the playoffs. And then he has a second question of, and who do you want to play in the playoffs, Milwaukee or Philly? So let's go with the first question, then we'll get to the second question after. So first question, how do you see the bullpen shaping up this last week? Start with you, Jake.
Yeah, I still think it's going to be Merriweather at the back end. I think that he's given the overall consistency. I've harped on it time and again. This is a guy who was in the running for the Blue Jays closer position at the beginning of last season. I want to say it was either last season or 2 years ago. So when the Cubs swiped him up, and he lost to Jordan Romano, who's top 3 closer in baseball, probably. So when the Cubs swiped up Merriweather, I was like, okay, the infrastructure sees something here. They know how to get this guy going. And lo and behold, he's been excellent. I think he had kind of a rough start, maybe a rough patch, a few outings to start the season, but he's been pretty locked in, to say the least. So I think that he stays at the back end. I think the setup guy is dependent on matchups. What's Alzolay's timetable right now? Do we know?
I don't think it's come out yet. I know he pitched he did some long toss, I think it was, but I think they're looking more for playoffs. I'm guessing that.
Yeah, I think the earliest he's back, they said, is like Milwaukee series. I don't even think they intend on him throwing in this Atlanta series.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the X factor for me in the bullpen is, surprisingly enough, Drew Smyly. I mean, Smiley's looked pretty good out of the bullpen, and in short spurts, right? In 1 inning stints. He's got the experience. He's looked composed. His stuff has played up seeing it live, it definitely played up. Yeah, so I think it's going to kind of stay that way, and I think it's been trending that direction all season, apart from when Leiter was really hot. I think it's been trending in the direction that Merriweather would take over as closer if anything were to happen, with Alzolay out. What do you guys think?
I echo that. Truthfully, I think it's Merriweather the whole way. He's been probably your most consistent arm over the course of the year, in my opinion, that actually has kind of that late inning stuff, right? I mean, that 99-mile-per-hour fastball up high is just nasty late in games.
Yeah.
And the strikeout stuff is too good. I really don't have much to add, Jake. I think you nailed it, right? It's a lot of matchups from there. Smiley's been good. Leiter, when he's on, is we all know what he can become. And then I think they're going to have to lean on a couple guys you're not expecting too. Like, I think there's a world where in a pinch, because he's a lefty, a Luke Little's pitching in a situation that might not be like super high leverage, but it's still important, right? It might be a sixth inning if your starter can only go through 5 or something like that, where maybe
sixth inning Matt Olson matchup.
Yeah. Like, maybe he needs to come in and get you 3 really important outs given that time of the game. So I really think it's just kind of getting to it's arms by committee. You just got to get there and give yourself a chance. But I will echo you, Jake. I agree wholeheartedly. I think Merriweather still gets the ball in the 9th.
Well, we do know Quas will pitch every game these next 6 games, because
I forgot about Quas. I was looking it up and I was like, yeah, Quas is probably. He's been a good seventh inning man, and set up. But I think Quas ends up setting up a lot of games down the stretch if we're in that position.
Everyday Quas.
Yeah. I just don't want to see, I love Palencia, but I don't want to see him in a matchup with Acuna, I don't want to see him in a matchup where he's going to try to throw gas by one of the Atlanta's boppers, because it just ain't going to happen. So if it gets to that point where we're bringing in Palencia in the 7th, 8th, or 9th, that's not a good situation. But yeah, I would lean on Merriweather, even though he makes me nervous sometimes because he does walk some guys. But he does have wipeout stuff. He does have the stuff that can make batters swing and miss. And so that's what you need sometimes in the 9th. I don't know anybody else that really, it stinks that we're in this point with our bullpen. There a couple weeks ago, we were so confident in where we're at our bullpen.
Yeah.
And one critical guy, Alzolay, goes down. It kind of throws everything. That plus Leiter getting cold. He's going down to hot Atlanta. Maybe he'll get hot again and figure it out. So I would take Leiter being back to the light show that we want, because we need him. Because then I kind of feel like we're back in the day of getting, if we do make the playoffs, then there's no confidence there in our bullpen, when a lot of times there's a lot more stress on pitchers, and starting pitchers only go 4 or 5. You see them going to the bullpen a lot earlier in the playoffs, and we don't have the horses down there in the pen to be able to get us through the rest of the game with reliable guys.
Yeah.
So that's where it's tough. So I would like to see Alzolay back for at least 1 or 2 games before, if we're getting in the playoffs, that we at least see him a little bit and see if he can get back to form. And then let's get to that second question. Would you rather see Milwaukee or Philly? Ron, you're ready, chomping at the bit for this one. What do you got?
I am, and I'll keep it simple. I'd rather see Milwaukee, and here's why. I don't even think at this point it's a matchup thing, because I think both teams match up tough, right? I mean, you've got Nola and Wheeler in Philly for those first 2 games. Walker, despite having weird numbers this year, statistically, wins wise, has had a really good year.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get 3 really good pitchers regardless, because obviously with Milwaukee it's going to be Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta. To me, though, I think the advantage then becomes with the lack of having to travel, to me, for this Cubs team, because you are on the road the last week of the season. You are down in Atlanta right now. You got to fly all the way back up to Milwaukee then. why would you want to have to go all the way then to Philly and have to go play in that hostile environment for 3 games? To me, I would rather let the Diamondbacks go, roll into Philly and have to deal with that. And especially because they have crazy travel because they're, coming from New York now to Chicago. Then they're going to go home to play Houston to have to go all the way back to Philly. I'd rather the Cubs just stay put, get an off day in Milwaukee. Hey, you guys want to take the bus really quick after the last game down to Chicago for a night and sleep in your own bed? Yeah, let's do that. That's cool too. To me, that element of it is more important at this point in the year because guys are tired and gassed and it's the end of the year. And at the same time, we've seen the Cubs beat Burns and Woodruff already. They've got the scouting report on them. Granted, obviously Milwaukee has the same kind of scouting report on the Cubs, but I think that familiarity for a team like the Cubs who love analytics and matchups, and to me, that's an easier and plus, guys, let's be honest. If the Cubs get in and beat Milwaukee and kick them out of the playoffs, I don't give a rat's ass what happens the rest of the playoffs. I'm going to be beating my chest all off season about the Cubs being the better team in the NL Central, despite how the standings shook out. So I think that nature of it alone would be really cool too, to have a divisional matchup like that. And the final point that is very optimistic looking, in fairness, but you stay on that side of the bracket, you play Milwaukee. Let's say you beat them in 3 games. I'd rather have to play LA than Atlanta in a 5-game series to potentially get to an NLCS. And then if the Phillies go on and beat the Diamondbacks, they're super familiar with Atlanta. So maybe you get a luck of the draw and they knock Atlanta out. Then I really like the Cubs' chances against Philly.
Then we're in the World Series.
Then who knows what can happen, Mitch? So
I love your path. I love your path to the World Series. Love it.
Ron's got bets. Ron's got futures on all of this.
We're thinking long term and short term here, but to me, just there's more advantage to the Cubs if they draw Milwaukee and get that final spot than flip side having to go out to Philly and deal with that mess. And then you're on the same side of the bracket as Atlanta. So maybe that works out if you beat Atlanta 2 out of 3 this weekend. You take the season series, but maybe that also looks really bad and doesn't go the right way. So that's my 2 cents. Give me the Brewers.
Yeah. I echo pretty much all of that. The one thing that I took into account where our thoughts differ, because I didn't really think about the the travel, because add to that, if we play the Brewers in the wild card, Cubs fans galore in Miller Park. Like Cubs fans galore, including myself. I would find a way to go to one of those games. I would for sure find a way to go to one of those games. But I think you also look at, so we've got the scouting report on the pitching. We've beaten those pitchers before. On top of that, Philly's offense has just been world beaters over the last 2 months, like month and a half. 3rd best offense in baseball by WRC plus, behind who? The Braves, and then the Astros are first, but they're tied in WRC plus. This is since August 1st. And the familiarity with the pitching, but more so like with the offense, keeping the offense in mind, I am more confident that if one of our pitchers throws a mistake, the Brewers are not going to be able to capitalize. The Phillies will. The Phillies have world-class hitters that will mash it into the next dimension. The Brewers, they are exactly league average over the last month and a half stretch at 100 with the WRC plus, 14th in the league. For what it's worth, the Cubs are 110, and we sit 11th. So yeah, but like you said, Ron, I mean, it would feel so good, especially if we can, if things shake out like on the most optimistic end of these last 6 games, we will probably be playing in Philly, right? If we take 2 of 3 in Atlanta, and then as we'd all love to sweep the Brewers, but it would be sweeter to face them in the wild card and beat them that way.
Yep. Yeah, I think I put out that tweet a week and a half ago. Like the competitor in me, like yeah, I wanted to win the division real bad. And when it finally like got a little too far and you're like, okay, I'm going to be a little bit realistic here. Like it's not a chance to, but you know what we do have? We have an opportunity to play them in the playoffs. And you know, it'd be even sweeter beating them in the playoffs when they like, oh, look, we won the division. Well, that means absolutely nothing because we were playing for rings. Like we're playing for championship rings, not
Not
division.
here to get a
like,
haircut.
And beat them in the ballpark that the Cubs helped keep the lights on for.
Yeah,
too, on top of
definitely. So like
Oh.
that's what I look forward to. And like you said, like we've kind of had Burns and Woodruff's number lately. Like we have the guys that we can put in a lineup that can meet velocity now. Like 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. Like that they just overmatched our offense because we didn't have guys that could hit velocity. Now we do. We have some guys that can put the ball in play. So I like the way our lineup is kind of stacked. We've played really good against them. We have Nico hits both Woodruff and Burns really, really well. Haps hit him well. Master Boney can hit Woodruff really well. The last series, I think he got a start versus Woodruff. I think he went 2 for 3. Like there's guys in our lineup that you wouldn't normally expect that I think could play very well against the Brewers. And I think our pitching, when Hendricks has always pitched well against the Brewers, I like the way it would set up. So yeah, I'm all about facing the Brewers because, like you said, Jake, the Phillies offensive lineup scares the heck out of me. Bryce Harper, the dude is a leader, whether you hate him or like him. The dude knows how to lead people and get them fired up. And with him, Turner, Castellanos, Schwarber, like Schwarber might strike out 4 times and then in the 9th inning hit a bomb and win the game. And so it's,
I mean, it goes even deeper than that. They've got JT Realmuto. They've got Brandon Marsh who could light it up. Like there are other guys that I'm missing. Alec Boehm. Like they have a super deep lineup. I do not want to face them in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yep. So yeah, there's our picks. And I love Ron's path to the World Series. Like I'm all for it. Like, let's go. You got me hyped.
Let's run it. The October of our lives. Let's be honest. That would be the craziest story ever for sports. And it would be immaculate.
All right. We got a question from Justin. Oh.
What's up, guys? Justin here. Sorry, I have my son sleeping on top of me right now. Questions for the Cubs for this season. If you had your way, what would be the perfect lineup versus a righty and the perfect lineup against a lefty for the playoffs? Thanks, guys.
Ooh.
Shouts out, Justin.
Big shouts out.
Justin.
Especially with baby in hand.
Yeah. And Justin coming with a difficult question. Like it's hard. Anytime, like, I know we rag on Ross all the time for lineups, and Cubs Twitter goes nuts anytime a lineup gets posted. Like, and now we have to sit down and try to make the line. It's hard, and especially we have some new variables that could possibly change with Candelario possibly coming back this week. So that could change some things. So, Jake, let's start with you. What do you got versus righty versus lefty?
Yeah, so instead of going top to bottom, I'll kind of talk about the key things that change for me versus righties and lefties. So versus lefties, I've got Nico leading off on base percentage. He's got speed. He's been his good WRC plus against lefties. He's shown well. If Jeimer comes back in time, I've got him at third base. One of the reasons that the Cubs went out and got him at the deadline was to face left-handed pitching. He's been good against them this season. Other notable things: Hap down in the order. I'd actually have him batting 6th behind Gomes, bat 5th, and Belly hitting in the 3-hole. Right-handed pitching. The one thing that I think would surprise people is that I would have Patrick Wisdom starting at third base. He's been good against right-handed pitching this season. I believe to the tune of like a 121 WRC plus. Don't quote me. I think that's what I saw earlier. Another fun fact: Patrick Wisdom, fucking rakes in Milwaukee. He's got how many? He's got 3 career home runs in 46 at bats. So that's not huge, but well, that's 46 at bats in 21 and 22. He's only got 6 at bats this year, and he's hitless with 3 strikeouts. But we know he's prone to strikeouts. The batting average has been good in those games too. In the previous seasons, a 368 average and a 273 average in 21 and 22. I was there when he broke the Cubs rookie home run record. I've seen him hit a couple moonshots there. So I'd like to see Wisdom in the lineup against righties. I don't know where he slots in, still bottom half, definitely. But to get that pop lower in the lineup would be great. And I still do think, were you going to say something?
Can we like pause for a second and want to appreciate Patrick Wisdom for yesterday? Like, cause that was a huge home run. Like that was like the
literally
vibe,
and figuratively.
Yeah.
The thing was a moonshot.
But like our vibe today would be a lot different if he didn't hit that. And like since kind of getting the change in role, he's at 90 plate appearances. He has 8 home runs in that time and has driven in 17. Like to have 8 home runs in a very like just you don't know when you're gonna play. Like it's sparse. Like, and when he gets in there, he has produced pretty good in that time. And so like it would be tough. Like, dude, you've been starting for almost 2 years and now you're playing once every 5 days, depending on if there's a lefty. Like you might play once every 6 or 7. Like I do have to like kind of appreciate that role, and he's accepted it and played really, really well. So you got to tip your cap. I know Ian would appreciate us pausing and appreciating Patrick Wisdom, because like I know we would love him. We would have loved him to really take a big step this year and be the guy at third. But even when he didn't, he's still doing some things that's going to help us push us to the playoffs. So, all right, continue on, Jake.
Yeah, I mean that's well said, Mitch, and I think it's something to be said when these guys can take a role change in stride like that. And I'd expect nothing less from the character that we've seen from Patrick Wisdom since he became a Cub. So yeah, it's clear. I think the dude just wants to help the team win, and I think he really relishes the fact it's a dude that like took him so long to get to the bigs that I think he'll just kind of take whatever he can get, and it's nice that this role has worked for him. Mitch, the stats you called out, I think Sahadev Sharma actually pointed it out too the other day. Like I saw that, like despite what fans think about Ross and his lineup construction, he's deployed Wisdom really well over the past, I think, like, a little over a month, maybe. I don't know I can't remember what the sample size was, but yeah. So I think Wisdom is a key. I would still, it would depend to me how Mastroboni and Talkman finish up the season here. If Mastroboni stays on fire, he makes the playoff roster, and he's a utility bat to have in the lineup, a Tommy LaStella-esque type, if he can keep the contact rate going. And then I mean, he's still come up in big situations. The guy's going to get on base. So I think those guys slot in somewhere in the lineup. Otherwise, the lineup kind of looks the same as it has top to bottom for me.
Ron, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similar kind of themes to my lineups that we've seen Ross already kind of deploy with a little bit of tinker and changes. I think because with the lineups in the playoffs, every at-bat is so crucial, right? Obviously, every at-bat of every game is crucial, but it's the playoffs. Like, you feel the ante get up, but from at-bat to at-bat. So from a lefty standpoint, I kind of do like Morel DHing and leading off against lefties. I think just that surprise pop right out of the gate is such a game changer, especially again, playoffs to me is, especially in baseball, is the prime definition of you go on streaks because you build momentum quickly, and you need to do it in the playoffs. So what better thing than, Morel sending one 440 feet to the sky right out the gate against the lefty. So He's a lefty, but then Horner, I like Belly. Belly's in the 3-hole for both of my lineups. I think just you got to get your best pure hitter the most amount of at-bats you humanly can while giving him an opportunity to still drive guys in. Biggest difference is, against righties, I have Nico and Swanson up at the top of the lineup. I think given that different look again, Swanson was good in the 2-hole when they tried that Nico Swanson early in the year. They haven't done it in a while, so why not do it again? The one game they did do it, I think Swanson had 3 hits and I think Nico had 2. So they were producing at the top. Nico's in the 2 spot in my left-handed lineup. Against righties, I have Hap a little higher. He's hitting 4. Against lefties, he's hitting 6, kind of similar to what Bouge was entailing there. Swanson's in the 5 against lefties as well. Sea's in the 4 and 5, respectively, lefty, righty. And then, your bottom half of the lineup is still, I've got Gomes a little higher against righties. Against lefties, I have him hitting 7. And then I put Wisdom / Candy because I think there are opportunities where Wisdom might just legitimately be the better player that day to have in the lineup, depending on who's pitching. And quite honestly, it's funny. You mentioned, Wisdom and us giving the kudos for him. First off, Scott from Iowa is also jumping around somewhere. Loves that. And I can't wait until I hope he calls Juice out at some point on Twitter. But then secondly, the other day I said that on Saturday, I told my dad, I was like, oh, he's playing, Sunday. It was Sunday. I was like, oh, he's playing third. And my dad kind of looked at me and went, I was like, I'd rather see him than Miles Masterboni for once, just to get a different flavor. I know Masterboni's been hot, but again, the power in the playoffs is an astronomical key to success. It's the unfortunate truth, but look at all the 2016 run. How many big home runs were hit? That Baez homer against the Giants, right? So many home runs just can flip a series on its head. And then I've got actually against lefties, I got Candelario. If he makes a playoff roster, he is eligible because he was on the 40-man by the September 1 call-ups. Whole reason I did not include PCA in any of my lineups is because he's technically not eligible, which might be a flaw on the part of the Cubs because his defense and his base running could have been really good in the playoffs, but neither here nor there. Sure. And then against righties, I've got Talkman is that guy. I think Talk could lead off too. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but some are either 1 or 9 to me is where the center fielder's batting if it's not Cody Bellinger. So similar taste to yours, Jake, with a little bit of a difference in flair. But
I like the call on Morel too. I was struggling with maybe him leading off against lefties too. For the same reason you said, just pop right out the gate. I mean, think about Dexter Fowler game 7, right? That's what you'd love to see to lead off any playoff game to get the momentum going.
100%.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was landing. I still love the idea of Nico and Dansby at the top of our order, just because it gives us that leadership right away. And they're going to put together some great at bats. Not that Morel doesn't, but Morel is so hot and cold sometimes, and you get more of a consistent, and you want your leaders to be able to lead. And so that's where I would want those guys at the top. But besides everything else, what you guys are saying, I agree that I think Wisdom deserves an at bat. I think that he could, in the right matchup, depending on if it is Woodruff or Burns, I don't like that matchup for Wisdom. I just don't. Peralta maybe a little bit better, but I don't like it versus those. So that's where looking that if we're probably going to face a lot of righties, you look at Philly and you look at Milwaukee, they're both right-handed, strong pitching. And so then you're gonna have to look at, okay, then you're probably going to have Nico 1, Dansby 2. I would go Belly 3, Seiya 4, Hap 5. I know he likes having Hap up a little bit higher, but I feel like you need to have Belly and Seiya get as many at bats as possible. And so get your best 5 up at the top, get them up there because they're going to get the most at bats, and we want them to be able to produce in that then you can kind of fill in with the Master Bonies or the Jan Gomes, like whoever we kind of need to kind of fill out down there. But I think getting Jeimer back would stretch our lineup a ton. I mean, we talked about a ton when we got him in the trade deadline. He just lengthens our lineup. Not that Mastroianni doesn't, because he's been hot this week, but there's a difference from the pitcher's mindset when Jeimer Candelario steps up in a Miles Mastroianni. Like, Jeimer has some cred to him, and Miles just doesn't. So you're gonna have to make sure you bear down. And the more you make playoff pitchers work for outs, the better. That's why those good lineups, like back in the day of the Yankees all the time, is because they made pitchers work 1 through 9. Every one, first through the 7th inning, you're working like that. So to get pitchers working that much, like it tires them out quicker, and then you get to their bullpen. So that's the way I look at it. So, got anything more to add?
I think the one thing too, just to keep in mind, just quickly with Jeimer as well, having him back gives you so much more lineup and defensive flexibility, right? Because he can play first and still give you a quality glove at first. That gives Patrick Wisdom an opportunity to play third the same day. You can also have DHing Morel, and then you can put Belly out in center, especially now because, again, there is no PCA in the playoffs because he's technically not roster eligible. So, again, flaw, I think, on the part of the front office for not getting that done. We don't know if we're going to see Madrigal because of, based on what Ross has said, that they think it's a little worse than expected, which is actually a real shame because, Jake, you were right. I'll bite my tongue and give you credit where credit's due. I mean, I think he turned a lot of people's opinions around on his play this season. So, but just having Jeimer back is going to be huge for the versatility of that lineup and where you can play guys defensively.
All right, we got one more question. Ian.
Hey, gents. Great season on the podcast, as always. Thanks for having me on a couple times. It was a blast, and this season was so much fun following along with you guys. My question for you all would be, who do you hope to see as part of our pitching rotation next year, and who do you hope stays? And do you think there's any trade moves in terms of Stroman happening, with the opt-in likely to happen, having happened, based on the rumor mill at this point? So would love to hear your take, and thanks again for an incredible season covering the team, and really love what you all do.
Ian's glasses, mustache, 70s Bear Cub logo look is the biggest vibe that I needed on this Monday night. That was fantastic.
Just a hell of a mustache. Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
Ian. Yeah, obviously we whether or not he's on the podcast, Ian comes up, it feels like every week. So we love Ian. And great question. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that, I mean, I can, since I'm already talking, I can jump into my thoughts.
Go for it.
I didn't really get into any trade speculation. I didn't really get into contract exercising. Or option exercising. I went straight into the fact that based on what we've seen with Steele down the stretch here, his body is ramping up. His body is getting used to a workload like this. It's the most innings that he's ever thrown in his life. I think that it's better that it happens this season, so that next season his body, he knows how to handle the workload mentally, physically, so on and so forth. He's been there, right? But we need someone to complement Steele. I really like Stroman. I think Stroman did a lot of, a lot of, he was great to start the season, right? Before the wheels started to come off. I do think, like Ian said, that he will exercise his option. I mean, based on how the season's wound up for him, I expect to see him on the Cubs next year. And I don't really expect there to be a trade. I don't know what that offer would have to be. If there's something out there where we can get a third baseman, I know that's something that I was talking about during the trade deadline. Like if we could have shipped Stroman for a good third baseman with some control, like I would have taken that. I think I would still take that this offseason, especially considering the pitching market that's out there and the guys that we theoretically have coming up next season. So for me, like I said, the big thing is trying to get another workhorse atop the rotation. The question mark that I put out there is Aaron Nola. I think people kind of forget like that Aaron Nola is out there because he's kind of had a down, like kind of an up and down season, but his track record is pretty sterling. I mean, this guy, I don't necessarily know if he's like the can't miss ace that you want, but he's definitely a number 2. And I think in this rotation, in a good season, he'd be an obvious number 1 for the Cubs. I think that you sign him to a long-term contract. He'll be entering his age 31 season next year. The reason why I say Nola too is because he's coming off of a down season for him. Still a serviceable year, and he's had some really great starts here and there. They're going to be Cubs fans talking about like, well, what about Blake Snell? It's like, well, Blake Snell, we've seen, if you're playing fantasy baseball, the 3 of us here obviously know, Blake Snell, the last few seasons has been ridiculous in the sense that he started the season like, this is not Blake Snell. Why is this slow ramp up happening every year? And then he's taken off. It happened quicker for him this year. And maybe it's because he's in a contract year and was thinking about that. And, something mentally maybe locked in for him. He's going to get a ton of money. And I don't want the Cubs. His track record I could eat my words here, but I don't like his track record. I think Nola will command a little bit less money. I think he's more of a workhorse. The floor is more stable than Blake Snell's floor. While Snell has a much higher ceiling, I think Nola still has a high ceiling. And then I also put out there too, I'll kind of ask you guys as I hear what you guys have to say. Do you take a chance on Lucas Giolito? Lance Brozdowski broke down that now that he's with Cleveland, Mitch is shaking his head. No, but Lance Brozdowski broke down that now that he is with Cleveland, he's broken up his slider into 2 distinct pitches, or that's what he's working on. And his last outing or 2 maybe have looked really good. And I was fucking pissed in fantasy because if I pitched him, I would have made it to the next round. But he's changing his slider into 2 pitches, a slider with a little bit more depth, and then a cutter, so that he's got more of an effective pitch outside of the changeup that we know can be stellar when it's on. But he's got the cutter to face lefties if the changeup is off. So that'll be interesting to track. And before the blow up, because he got claimed, he got claimed directly from LA by Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, because the Guardians claimed him and Lopez. And
which I'm still salty about.
Yeah. And I wanted the Cubs to get any of those 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Giolito got shelled in his first game with the Guardians, only to lock in, like I said, I think the next 2 starts. So Aaron Nola is my pick. What do you guys think? Like, do you go after free agency, or are you guys looking internally at the team?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I still rest on the fact that I think the Cubs need to go out and get one more starting pitcher, regardless.
Yep.
I think that's a necessity. And I think the end of this season has shown that. Not necessarily from like, oh, they don't have the guys in house to get it done. I'm thinking, if nothing else, from a depth perspective, I think that's where they could really use it. Because to me, there's going to be a couple of these guys that become weapons in some form or fashion. It's not going to be as a starting pitcher. Although Javier Assad, I think, has pitched his way into the conversation for a starting role, truthfully. We've seen how good he is when he comes out of the pen and goes in that multi-inning role. I mean, he's nasty when he comes out in that role. So, it really is one of those things to me where I look at the rotation for next year and I say Steele's a guarantee. Stroh, I think, opts in. I agree. Stroman looks really good in that rotation. We don't know if the professor's coming back. I mean, frankly, let's just be honest. I think there's a world where the Cubs try to get out of Drew Smiley's $8.5 million that he's due next year and then they can not even have to worry about the option for the 3rd year, even though it's mutual, so they wouldn't have probably exercised it anyway. But then you're looking at a question mark with Tyone. So realistically, you have 2 spots to fill, which one of them I think Jordan Wicks fills. I think he has gotten every opportunity coming into spring training next year to get one of those spots. But I'm going to echo what Jake said here. I really do think Aaron Nola is is surefire bet because he's one of the few guys that's gone 200 innings. Like 200 inning guys in baseball are becoming more like unicorns than they are the common majority. And I mean, he's had multiple seasons doing that. And even recently, just last season, he went 205 innings. And this year, right now, he's got 31 starts. He's probably going to make at least one more start down the stretch here. I mean, he's going to push that 200. He's at 187 innings of work right now. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, only 45 walks all year. I mean, he's pushing 200 strikeouts as well with 194 right now. Give me a guy that's going to strike out 200, give me 200 innings of work and only walk 50 guys. I mean, and you know what, Jake, to your point, I think Aaron Nola is severely underappreciated across baseball to the point where somebody's going to forget about him and not give him the money that he probably deserves. And maybe the Cubs can sweep in because everybody's going to be enamored with Snell, just like you said, right? He's had a good year. He's got 228 punch outs. That 2.31 ERA looks nice. But this is only the second most amount of innings he's pitched in his career at 175. He's 180 and 2/3 is his career high. Outside of that, you're looking at a guy that typically only pitches about 128, 29 innings a year. I'm not paying that guy a ton of money. Plus, I think the Cubs have very good left-handed options that are a year or two away instead of paying a 30-year-old that kind of money. To me, it's Nola. If you miss on Nola, I think they could take a flyer on Giolito. I really do. He's only 29, so it'll be his age 30 season. All the things that they're working with him in Cleveland, I'm sure Carter's taking notes and going,
for sure.
We would have done that. We would have done this a little differently. We would do this a little differently here. I'm going to throw him in the pitch lab, and that changeup's going to be disgusting. Cool. Okay, great. And you get him you could probably get him on a 1 or a 2 year deal too.
He might, it might be like a Bellinger type thing for a pitcher. Yeah, it especially totally could be.
I think it really does come down to how confident the Cubs are internally. So kind of spinning this question back on its head again. I think they are looking heavily internally because that's going to let me backtrack here really quick. How they approach free agency this winter will tell you where they think their starting arms in the farm are. Mm-hmm. To me, if Nola's coming in, he's getting at least a 5-year deal. And that means the Cubs think that some of these guys are maybe 3+ years away where, by that point, Tyone's probably off the books, Stroman's off the books, etc. If they go after a Giolito as a 1-year reclamation project, that means guys like Cade Horton are much closer than we think they are. That means guys that like Jackson Ferris are progressing quickly and might be here more on the end of 3 years than 5 years. I think that's really what's going to dictate the difference. But I agree with you, Jake. Priority number one should be Aaron Nola. I think Aaron Nola would look splendid in Cubs colors, almost as good as Cole Hamels did coming from Philadelphia to Chicago. Man. Yeah. And he would look really good as a number 2 behind Steele. I mean, that lefty-righty punch at the top of your rotation's nasty. And then now you can exercise that depth that they have as a team. A Marcus Stroman being your 3rd guy in the rotation now. A guy like, like Chris is dropping in too, right? Ben Brown could maybe come up and be a bullpen arm and a weapon that way. Wicks is your starter. You got your 5th guy in Tyone. How nice would it be if Tyone looks like a good version of Tyone and he's your 5?
No kidding. Yeah.
That one addition in the rotation to me makes such a huge difference. So I think they have to go for Nola, and if they miss on him, I'm calling up Giolito and saying, would you like to come back to the better side of the city of Chicago? At least for a year, and then we can go from there. So, but I echo what you said, Jake, for all the right reasons. Just trying to add to the fuel to the fire here as to why I agree with you, and I almost spilled all over my laptop.
I am gonna go. I think they're gonna go after Yamamoto from Japan.
Oh, I totally forgot about the Japanese guys. Yeah.
The Cubs were in attendance for his no-hitter. The dude is filthy. Tops out at, I think, 97 in his fastball. Over in Japan, he has a 1.26 ERA. His record is 155-26. Like, he has a 0.88 whip. He has 8.9 Ks per 9 innings. The dude, 97 mile an hour fastball. He throws a cutter, curveball, and a splitter. the dude's good. Like the big thing is like, how does he transition to the MLB? He's done
we
it for
saw
quite
how
a few years.
Senga transitioned this year.
And
Like,
having some familiarity with Seiya, like I think that's the route they go. If they can get a good deal, I think he would fit really well in the rotation. Provide another power arm, which I think that's what they've wanted. Like we heard Jed press conference the last 2 years at the end of the season. What do they want? They want velocity. They want guys to like get some strikeouts. This is your dude that could do that. And he would fit right in with you already have 2 lefties, and I think Wicks is going to be a starter next year in the rotation. I think he's earned it. You have Steele, 2 lefties. That's great when you have 2 lefties in a rotation. Then you can have the other 3 being righties, where you have Tyone, Stroman, and Yamamoto. And then I would love to get Hendricks on a sweetheart deal coming back and being like, especially at the beginning of the season, having a 6-man rotation just to like save on some innings as you're like thinking, hey, this is going to be our playoff run. These guys are going to be having a heavy workload. Let's have 6-man rotation and piggyback Assad off of one of the guys. Maybe it's a Hendricks Assad outing like every 6 day. Like, why not at the beginning of the year? And then there's our 5, 6, or 7 deep rotation that we have. If one guy goes down, like we have Assad to fill in. If one guy goes down, Hendricks can fill in. Like we have those guys. We've seen like it work. I would love that. But I love the question, Ian. It's fun to play that, because I do think they're planning on next year. They're really going to try to put the foot down on the pedal, and they're going to try to make some big moves. And getting Yamamoto would be great. Re-signing Belly is a must. And
yes,
but it's fun to look forward. But we still got this season. 6 days, 6 games. It's gonna be a fun ride, intense ride, but we asked for it. We wanted meaningful games, and now we got it. And we're like, oh, this is. We haven't felt these things in a while. It's tough, but it's also
stressful.
a lot. It's stressful. It's like, I don't need the stress right now. I have all these other things going on, but like, hey, it's fun. It's fun to be able to watch meaningful baseball this far into the season. 100%. And anytime you can watch a Cubs playoff game, it's been a good year. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, being able to watch a playoff game with my kids and just sit down. Hopefully we get a good like time and not like a middle of the day game. Those are tough. So hopefully we get a marquee time period, like 6 or 5 o'clock. But yeah. Thanks for all of the questions. Appreciate you guys that sent them in. Those are awesome. There were some great questions. That we love it because it just drives conversation. Just talk. So need to do that. Definitely need to do that again. But thanks. And thanks, Ron, for jumping on. It was awesome.
Hey,
killed it as always. The guys on Cubs on Tap are going to be on right after us. They're going to be doing another show talking about their experiences being at Wrigley because all those guys were there for a majority of the last 2 weeks. So make sure you listen to those guys. Subscribe to Cubs on Tap and On Tap Sports Network YouTube channel, and go just check out ontapsportsnetwork.com, where you can read some great articles on our Cubs, the Bears. I mean, they're pumping out articles, but
oh god, yeah. I'm glad Jeff isn't on tonight to give us shit about.
Yeah.
Especially because Green Bay came back and beat the Saints too.
The Packers did not win. Derek Carr got hurt. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Jake, it's getting to the point where like, I mean, I played college football. It's like football's always been my number one sport. I think it always will be, just by nature. But I have never been so thankful for the Chicago Cubs in my entire life than I am through these first 3 weeks of the NFL season. Because they
5 minutes into the game yesterday. 5 minutes in, I was like, well, I don't need to pay attention to this one.
You know what saved me? I was out and about for the games, and they had the Bears game on here, and the Cubs were on here, and I watched Kansas City score a touchdown, and I went, and I looked, and Wisdom hit the homer, and I was like, yes,
oh my God.
yes, that saved it. That saved it. Let's go. Yeah, the only thing that made it better because they're so bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. It's gonna be a fun week. So
Go Bears!
Enjoy it. All right. Go Cubs.
I just said the animals.